might regret it.
Hey.
Hey.
I
didn't know if
Hey! Oh, the camera! Look at that! Oh, okay.
I didn't know if you made one of those fun intro video things like you normally do. I was waiting for it to start.
No, because that was way too professional, even though it still didn't work.
That's real.
Because
That's real.
this is what we're known for, whatever this is. Hi, kids! Hi, everyone
Hello.
out there!
Hello,
hello.
How is everyone doing? Welcome to the hashtag the Cisco Day. I was going to say anyway, but
The
welcome
Cisco
to that.
Day.
Yay!
Also, happy birthday, happy belated birthday, Nikki, who's not here today, one of our members.
She's alive and well.
She's alive and well. I didn't want me to be like she's not here with us today.
She's not with us. It always ends up that Anna is the one that's dead. But yeah,
I'm dead. I'm dead.
Nikki is
Inside. All right.
only inside.
Yes.
But
we're all
we
here.
are-
We're alive. We're well.
sort of. Yeah. Yes. We're not all here, but we are all alive and well. And we are the Lambda Quadrant. In case you hadn't guessed, do we have the name up? The name might be somewhere. I don't know what you see on your screen, but we're the Lambda Quadrant. And we love VTC and the kids over there for being nice to us and allowing us to come talk at you in weird and funny ways that a lot of times have to do with Star Trek, but are always unhinged. Anna's throwing gang signs. That's how she got killed. She's a ghost.
Ooh, Beverly.
It's really just her terrible internet. You would think she were a ghost, but it's just a bad.
So we're here to talk about Sisko as a dad, and I do need to just call out the fact that none of us have human children on the stream. We are all people who have been parented and have experienced the effects of parenting in different ways, in ways that I think it makes sense for us to have thoughts and opinions about those kinds of things.
Right.
Yeah.
True.
I know a
So-
lot about parenting.
So thanks for
from
showing up. Good night,
watching
everyone.
PBS. I've just watched a lot of PBS Kids, even as an adult, so that's how I know a lot about parenting. No,
Right
I'm
on the
kidding.
money. I know a lady who works at Sesame Street, so I'm a parent.
So where do we want to start? Do we want to start with the one that's going to make me cry a bunch, or do we want to?
Or do we want to
know.
do some housekeeping first?
Let's do some housekeeping.
Let's do some
Yeah,
housekeeping, and then we can cry.
yeah. Love that.
So,
It's a good plan.
So like I mentioned, we're Lambda Quadrant. If you haven't seen us before, that's weird. If you have, it's even weirder. Because you're back. So I don't know what to say about it. But what I do want to tell you is that we will be at Star Trek Las Vegas or STLV or whatever it's called this year. Again, as always, we will be there. But it's official. We have a table. We have the thing. We're going to do the thing. And we're going to show you some merch tonight that we'll have there. It's topical even. And that makes it even better because then it's not just merch. But this year, one of the things, we have a couple of items that will only be at STLV. And we're not going to sell them online or anywhere else. One is the gay self-sealing stem ball. And it's topical because
Brandy, can you raise it just a little bit? It's behind your name badge. There you go.
oh, it's my minute there. Isn't that wonderful? Oh, it's just wonderful. Ooh, yes. Anyway, so we'll have those at the table, and another surprise that I won't reveal yet. But we will have those, which are our first. We haven't made them.
So we don't need to come up with an answer for this just right now, but it's a thing to brainstorm. And our friends in the chat commenting if you would like to participate. When we have merch like that we do rainbow things with, we like to think of puns. So Randy had a phaser that became a gazer. Right. And so what we need to think of is the portmanteau or the pun or the wordplay for self-sealing stem bolt that has to do with gay stuff. So if nothing comes to mind immediately, totally fine. Just want to plant that in everyone's head so it's a thing that we can be thinking about. And like I said, our friends in the comments, if you have any ideas, want to hear them.
I had something, and it was I don't know if it's late enough all over the world for me to talk about it. So if you guys in the chat come up with something PG-13-ish.
The only thing I can think of is self-identifying stem bolt, but that doesn't really work. Because I don't want it to be
Yeah.
like people are identifying as a stem bolt. That's not what I mean. But like,
But you could, and we're happy about that.
yeah.
So that's that. So we will be there that the whole time for STOB. That's exciting. And then we're also going to be doing our normal Holocon Pride next month. We're still trying to pick a date, probably towards the end of the month, maybe ish around there. But we will send that stuff out. And so we're going to do another probably just the one dayer, but we want to give you guys some content and come do the thing and do pride stuff and raise money for charity and all the things for people who can't come to STLV. It will at that point be close enough that it'll be around the same time. So anyway, I think housekeeping done. Any questions?
Victory is like, Anne Marie, I adore you.
All right. So now on to the crying.
Yes, on to the crying. So, are we just gonna do it? We're gonna rip the Band-Aid off, or are we gonna talk about the visitor? Is that what we're gonna do?
Yeah, let's just do it.
I mean,
because like I was so
yeah,
I'm the only one that was able to watch this emotionally to prepare for today. Again for the second time. Yeah, so I did watch it last night, and it is what it is. But my comment just from the outset is how much that affects stuff in the future. That if you're not thinking about it, and then you do think about it, think about that. Anyway, so that's my comment.
Yeah,
before we talk about it.
Hey, I lost the last sentence you said, Randy. Sorry.
Oh, I said before we talk about the visitor, just keep in mind like what happens during it when we're talking about other stuff with how they talk.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah.
I would just like to share. So I've only been able to watch The Visitor once, because it messed me up so bad. I was like, I don't know if I can ever watch this again. I mean, Tony Todd kills that performance, but also Sirach, Avery, like they all. It's so good, and I forget the name of the actress who is the visitor, but she is Andy Robinson's daughter.
Oh, right.
Speaking of parenting, and that episode is so emotional. But I watched it with my dad. My dad and I both watched it for the first time.
Oh, Anna.
Together, because we were doing a
First
full
time. Oh, God.
we were doing a full watch all of Star Trek together. And my dad realized my dad had always said Deep Space Nine was his favorite, and then when we got to it, that's when my dad realized that actually he didn't watch all of season 3, nor did he continue, even though he loved it. But I was born in 96, which was then. So he went from having so my sister was born in 93 when it started. So he went from having one baby and could watch his one show to having a toddler and a baby, and it was never watch TV again.
No TV.
And so my dad and I watched The Visitor together, and we were just sobbing. I mean, my dad was, as he puts it, it's allergies or misty eyes. He jokes, but he's definitely crying. I'm sobbing. It's just, and I remember when it ends, because it's just kind of well, and that didn't really happen.
Yeah.
I remember my dad and I were just oh, okay, got it. The point of the episode is just rip our hearts out.
Right. Well,
also,
I know the point of the episode
Sisko's
is that
out.
now he knows that shit.
And what it really is, it's we went on the journey that Sisko went on.
Mm-hmm.
We watched his heart, he got his heart ripped out. And it's similar with Far Beyond the Stars. It doesn't necessarily relate to the rest of the series. They bring Benny Russell back for a moment. The Paul Wraiths are trying to convince him that he's Benny Russell crazy, just writing more Deep Space Nine stories for a brief moment. But also in Far Beyond the Stars, that episode, Jake dies in that. He gets killed by cops. And so it's really this element of how many times is Sisko going to watch his son die in alternate realities? And I think in some ways, whether it be the Paw Wraiths, because who knows, that's why they gave him the vision to begin with, maybe, who knows about Far Beyond the Stars, or it's just the way of the universe and how like the universe needed to right itself for the prophet's design to go well is taking Jake
Right.
away from Sisko is the worst thing you can do to him.
Right.
Like it's one thing
Prophets
where
are
at the
dicks, you guys.
like but the prophets don't
Seminole
want that to happen.
Space Karen.
The prophets want him to be the emissary, and it's one thing for him to be like, hey, I'm gonna leave at the end for the thing, but he does say he will come back, he will return. Maybe tomorrow, maybe yesterday, which I know I have thoughts on, but
So my experience of this episode, I've already gotten choked up a little bit just like thinking like, okay, what am I going to say? So I grew up without a dad in my life, really. My own father ran off. There's a very long story that would take longer than this panel to tell. But I grew up with a stepdad that I did not get along with. Still a little unsure if he's a bad person or we just don't get along. Like it's a whole thing. But I, with my real dad, I just always wondered, like, am I not cool enough that he like cares to want to know what's going on in my life? Like, am I not actually that important to him? And my mom is incredible. So like, that's not like, I wasn't lacking things in terms of what my mom could give me, but I just knew like on one level or another, there was some experience that I was missing out on having a stepdad I didn't get along with, and my mom who like was doing her best and was incredible, but was just stretched very thin. And then to see the bond that they have and just realizing like, obviously it's a TV show. It's not real. It's played up for the drama of a television show, but like that's a reflection of, in theory at least, how much parents are supposed to care about their kids. And it's such a clear distillation of that it made it very just painfully, starkly clear what I was missing out on. And this, like, I have seen, I'm one of those fans that like for a long period of time, and still sometimes like Star Trek's just kind of always on in the background. And so like legitimately I've, even just like since the beginning of COVID, I've probably done 5 watch throughs of Deep Space Nine. Like, and that is the only episode off the top of my head that I can think of. That's the only episode that I will skip. And it's not because I don't love it. It is because I emotionally cannot handle it unless I'm in the right headspace. And it's legitimately like, I know, internet discourse has kind of messed up the meaning of the word triggered. But the music, like the orchestral suite from that episode, that like there's a theme that goes throughout the entire episode that like repeats in variations over and over again, but it's a very identifiable series of notes that legitimately, when I hear those like violins or violas at the very beginning, I like my heart sinks and I just like, I'm like, oh my God, pause the TV. Cause it just hit me that hard.
My father and I this does relate to that music specifically, were in a Irish pub in New York City after seeing the last season of Picard first episode screening in New York City. And I was wearing like a Delta badge, and there was a guy who was very high at the bar who was like, Trek, and we're kind of like, okay, here, because he was like telling us it was like the first week FDNY could smoke weed. So he was, and he was in FDNY, so he was like messed up, and we were kind of like, okay, this guy's gonna be. He's just like, let me talk to you about the music of Star Trek. And it turns out his like dad is a orchestration professor, and he brought up the Visitors music and how he's just like, I hear that music, my dad and I both just start tearing up, and I was like, this is the best weird thing to happen in New York City right now. But like, yeah. And then my last thing on that is talking about my father and like that bond that I'm very lucky to have, and also music. And then again, my dad and I share a love of Star Trek. Is when I was in a very dark place. I later found out that when my dad was worried about my mental health and what I might do to myself, my dad had written a song for me. Yeah, and he played it for me, but he was worried about playing it for me because he didn't want me to get upset potentially or getting
Right.
and it was beautiful and it was about like dark wanting to keep you protect you from dark clouds and dark storms and it was very emotional and I think about that like I'm very lucky that I have very loving parents and like when I see Cisco and Jake I'm like yeah that's like Cisco to me is the closest character that's ever been to my dad. Like, but so it just anyway, the visitor's really sad, guys.
Well, Randy,
I
what's your story with it?
so it's really interesting. So like I I watched it last night, and I cried for sure. Like it's a very like it's a touching story. My dad was abusive growing up, and so for me, I don't have it. It doesn't. I don't have no connection to it personally. Like it doesn't. It
Mhm,
doesn't have any feeling for me as a human, other than like seeing someone else suffer, and that makes me sad. But like for me, I'm like, I don't know what that is. Like it's like watching aliens.
mhm,
Mhm.
I'm like, I don't.
mhm.
Okay, that seems really great for them, but like, I don't know what I'm missing. Like, right? I can imagine, but like, that's imagining like winning a lottery. Like, you can always imagine, but it's never gonna. It's the same as
You
watching
don't
a
feel it.
TV show where somebody wins the lottery. It's like, that's. I bet that's amazing. Like, I don't know. But yeah, so I don't have that, and so it's so strange. Like, and
Yeah.
like, so if I heard the music, I'd be like, oh, it's that, that's a sad episode, but like, it doesn't really have the same like pull for me at all. Just because that was not, and like and I think not only because like it was something that I was missing, but because it was something bad too, right? So like,
Yeah.
it's not like
Right.
what could have been. I'm like, oh, I know what could have been, and it was terrible, and I don't want it. So like, I don't like, I'm
Yeah.
not like, oh, I'm like, oh no, that's good. We can that can good, I can go away. So it's really no, the episode is beautiful, and obviously, of course, it's so like, oh my god, the story is gut wrenching. I can't even imagine.
And there's
Yeah.
something that's like kind of just under the surface of the episode that is when in the moments when Cisco comes back and he's talking to Jake and he's like I want to hear about your life. I want to hear what's happened. Do I have grandchildren? And when Jake starts telling him like, I tore my life apart and destroyed everything because I want to be able to bring you back.
Yeah.
And 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 Ben is like, no, like you can't do that. Like you have to live your life.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and this is a thing that I end up talking about in my relationship with my girlfriend, even like one of the reasons that I think our relationship is strong foundationally is because I know that like if something bad happened to me, she would be okay. If something happened to her, I would be okay because we know how to live life without each other, and it's just better when we're together, right?
Hmm.
Mhm.
And when you really really love someone, that the way people, let me back up and start that thought over. The way that people attempt to express love for other people often comes from a selfish place. And that's not even necessarily bad, right? Because I love you because you bring something into my life. And one of the reasons I do that is because of what you bring to my life. It's valuable to me. And so I want to cultivate that relationship. But sometimes there's an insecurity that lets you like overcorrect and try to hold on to that too hard. And sometimes that can work itself out in ways that make you kind of a jerk sometimes. Like
Mhm.
even in the best of circumstances with the best of intentions, you're a jerk to someone because of insecurity, because you feel
Hmm.
like threatened or something like that. Um, but when Ben is saying like, no, like you have to go live your life. I can't be at the center of all this because like your happiness and your life matters for its own sake. Like I love that you want I love that you want me back in your life, and that's great. But it's so much more important that you're able to go live your life because that actually like really, really matters a lot. And I think the ability to like not just say that, but legitimately feel it, knowing what it might cost you but just knowing that like you're putting the other person's needs at the center. I feel like that when you get there, that's, at least for me, most of what it actually means to love someone else. And that's not even just as a parent. That's as friends, as whatever kind of relationship you have with another person. So yeah, that's the foundational bit for me. Like, not just necessarily parenting specifically, but like the way that you love someone else in a way that is about them as much as it is about you.
Right. Ben Sisko he adores his son Jake, and he wants to be around him and spend time with him like as much as he can, but he wants Jake to live for himself. He doesn't like, that's the thing, is like, he's not like, help me Jake, I'm trapped here. He's like, oh my God, he's almost like, oh my God, what a blessing. I'm seeing an age of my son that I never would probably have gotten to. Like, he's just excited at first, even in a way. Like, he's not just like upset that he's lost these years. He's just like, I want to talk to my son and I want to catch up, and then, but even there's, like when Jake wants to move out, he's sad, but he's also like, this is right. This is the right thing to do. And like, he's, it's not this possessive love even. It's this, and he could have overcorrected, he lost his wife and he could have got, we've definitely seen characters who then like, and we've probably met people too who get like, so like, no, I need to protect the rest of my family. But instead he's like, I want to love and nourish and protect my son, but I'm not going to possess him.
Right.
And
So,
he also
sorry, go ahead.
Oh, well, I was just saying, he never uses like Jennifer and like, your mom wouldn't want that or anything like that. He's always just like, her memory is very sacred to him, which I think is also a good element too, as a widower and single father.
Right. So I didn't look it up, and I haven't participated in a lot of conversation about it, but we assume that at the end of that episode that he remembers everything, right?
That's what
They
thought.
don't make it explicitly clear.
Right.
I think I could just as easily see him retaining his memory of that as I could him, like, because remember when it comes back into the real world and they're on the Defiant, he knows to like move, right? And that could just be like a second chance at a reaction. It could be an instinctual thing. And when they look at each other and they hug each other afterwards, like, that could just as easily be the context of like, I remember all of the things that just happened, or this dangerous thing happened and like, thankfully we're okay. And I'm just going to hold on to you a little tighter because like, that was scary.
So the line at the end, he asks him, he's like, how did you know to do that? And he's like, I guess I got it right this time, is what he says.
Yeah.
And so that made me think like, oh, he does remember.
I very much think that that Ben remembers and sadly watched his son die. And again, like with Far Beyond the Stars, he remembers that too. And in when he was living Far Beyond the Stars, he didn't think Jake was his son, but he thought he was this youth that he wished he could help. And then when he's back to being Sisko, remembering it, he remembers that that's his son. And I just think about like, can't Ben just go one watching his son die? Like,
and I don't want to imply in any way that like he wouldn't be as good of a father, but like, how does that like change how you interact with your child going through all that and having that memory, and they have none of that memory? You know what I mean? Like, knowing that your kid would live out his entire life trying to like have an extra 5 minutes with you or whatever, and then kills them. You know, like how. And when I was watching, because I also went back and watched the like whatever it's called, the Sun Sail episode.
Explorers.
There you go. Yes, and you can really see him like when he's when Jake is talking about going off to the writing
Pennington
thing that he
School.
got or whatever. Yeah. And he's gonna put it off a year, and you can really see Ben like struggle with like, do I want to have it try and make him stay, or should I, but like you can see
Yeah.
that struggle, and like having that color on it of the thing before, it's like I have to tell him to go do the writing thing, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
and you wonder like how the conversation would have gone otherwise, if he would have tried to hold him in a little bit. But he's like, no, you have to go do the writing. You have to go do the freaking go do the damn writing. Like,
Mm-hmm.
but he saw what happened, right, when he didn't do it, and his whole life was transformed.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
he has the maturity to recognize that, like, I'm going to have feelings about my kid becoming an adult and going off and doing his own thing. But I think he recognizes that those are his feelings to work through, and that it's not for him to put that on Jake. This is
Yeah.
something that I think about with my mom. Like, I remember as I was I had like my van and trailer in the backyard, like packing the rest of my stuff, and when I took off, I was starting to drive away, and I had like hugged my mom goodbye. She went to walk inside, and I'm just like driving super, super slowly through the backyard, trying not to mess up the grass. And my mom just comes flying out of the back door with 2 boxes of macaroni and cheese to toss through the window, because she's just like, right? Because she's
Just in
like,
case.
yeah,
Hey, so what? They're
because
25 cents.
because she knows, like, I'm off on this big adventure. I'm like moving out of my mom's house across the country for the first time, and she wants me to go do this thing. She wants me to have the adventure. I'm an adult and I'm moving out, and there is no part of her that is trying to like hold me at home or start like be selfish in that way. But
Right.
she's still my mom, and she cares, and that's like one way that she can be like, okay, I need to do this last thing just to make sure that they're actually going to be okay.
Yeah.
And I just see these boxes of mac and cheese that they're going through the window.
Okay.
It's very much that
I love
energy.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
And there's and like you said with Explorers, another thing with Explorers is he wants Jake to go on this adventure with
To
him
go
from
on the yeah.
the beginning. He's like, "Yo, I thought I'd make this old ship and we could go a
Everyone's like,
sailing."
why?
Yeah.
He's like, "I thought I'd just take a break from, all the important things I do as commander of DS9."
Right, literally my entire job that normally takes 24 hours out of the day. Yeah.
Like, and Jake is like,
But then he
"Nah,"
built the ship too heavy and it went to warp by itself.
like, and Jake is like, "Nah, I'm good. I kind of don't want to do that, Dad." and
Like,
Ben is
not so
sad, but also he's still gonna do it because he's like, well, this is still something I want. It doesn't ruin it for him.
Right.
But also he isn't gonna pressure Jake.
Mhm.
Right. Yeah.
And then when Jake says like, "Oh yeah, it's nice, but a little small, a little cramped for 2 people," kind of thing. Which also is such a great, like, Jake has his own wit and is also very much like his dad. That he's like, "Oh, but how would it fit 2 people? Like, this is how I'm telling," And then and rather than just being like, "Hey, I'm coming with you, Dad," it's so great. And Sisko doesn't even say anything in response. He just gets up and hugs him,
Yeah.
Mhm.
which is so loving and sweet. And then they like, yeah, he talks about this writing thing. And then also we know that Jake is a little nervous about showing people his writing.
Mhm.
I mean, was it Nog picks up one of his writings and is like, "What, you read it? Like, you're just," but then he's like, "Okay, well, what do you think?" And then Nog's like, "I just fixed the grammar." Which is like, I wish, as someone's a writer, I'm like, I would kill you, Nog, right then. Like, but when Jake, was excited to see a battle when he was following Dr. Bashir, and he was like, "This is so boring." And then he's like, "Hey, let's help these people." And then he's kind of egging it on, and then a battle happens, and he writes this piece about war, which is so, and it talks about like how he, kind of thought the other people who would run were cowards, and now he feels like himself is a coward and everything.
Mhm.
He lets his father read it, and he still has conflicted feelings about it when he's written it. And that's such a, like, intimate thing to show someone, especially when your dad's a commander in Starfleet, to be like, "Hey, I was cowardly."
Right.
And then Sisko just kind of says, like, "I think anyone who's been in war could recognize themselves in this." And it's just like, he kind of says exactly what he should say about it, and it's that like he really read it, you know, and he recognized how intimate this was, and that
Well,
it
and
was
this
more
is
than saying, "Oh, this is interesting." It was like, "You did a good job here, and it was good." Like,
yeah, and it's tough for me to imagine, like, obviously I feel very strongly that people who have been parented also get to have opinions about parenting. But this specific experience is one that I can really only imagine. The idea that, like, you know, you've not let your kid, you have recognized that your kid has the right and the agency to go off and do his own thing. And of course that means that, like, I can't protect him in the way that I might want to. And then he has this traumatic experience that, like, I wasn't with him during this whole thing, and he's, like, certainly not a child anymore. And, like, that's, I can only imagine how incredibly difficult that is, especially knowing that, like, war is something Sisko had seen plenty of before, and so he knows what Jake is in for, and it's, like, not great. But he, again, it feels like at least most steps along the way, he recognizes that as his struggle. Like, he doesn't put it back on Jake saying, like, this is your problem and I'm going to dump all these feelings on you. You know, like, he goes primarily to Dax about it, to, like, talk to her about it and get perspective. It's, which is, like, I mean, that's the healthy way of doing things, right?
yeah,
Right. Yeah. For sure. Which is, it's it's great to see. I think it's really just because I don't feel like probably I would venture to guess enough people have that kind of interaction with their parents where it's so, like, adult and conversationally and listening and actually, like,
yeah,
responding completely healthy. And obviously it's a TV show, right? But at the same time, like, if we don't see those great representations of that anywhere, how would we know that they exist anywhere? So I get that it's heightened, and he's probably better than a lot of humans ever could or would be. But I still think it's an important story to tell, because seeing the, like, that one, right? Like, oh, there's better ways to do this.
yeah.
I think it's good.
Well,
Yeah.
does Cisco? I can't remember if it was Cisco. Did Cisco make the decision to have Odo put Nog and Jake in prison together? So that way they'd become so, like, sometimes maybe there were better ways of handling that, but also
See what, like,
TV show, good content.
I don't know.
Like, you know. And there's other times where Cisco does that, actually. Where I do sometimes feel like what makes him such a good commander is that he's just parenting everyone. Like, there's when the Union episode is happening, and you know, Bashir and O'Brien are like taking bets on who's gonna go into Quarks and who's won't. And then Worf goes into Quarks, and O'Brien's like, "Let's confront him." And then it ends up in Worf and O'Brien argue, and Bashir gets punched in the face, and so it just, like, cuts to the three of them are in the prison, and Cisco's like, "Boys, what's going on here? You can use your adult words and figure this out." Like, and it's
I mean, at
so
least in
funny.
that case,
That's so
everyone's
funny.
adults and he is their commanding
Oh
officer.
yeah.
So I feel like he gets
Oh
a little
yeah.
more leeway to do stuff like that.
Oh, for sure. Oh, yes, for sure. I just think that but it's also like there's an element of, like, sometimes I do kind of think to myself, why is Bashir in that prison? He just followed O'Brien. O'Brien and Worf argued, and Bashir got punched. But sometimes I kind of think,
Well, because you don't
was
know.
it
Like, I
because
think they do that because, like, how do you know what his involvement was before that? Like, maybe he does deserve to be there. I think until they, like,
maybe
figure
instigated?
that out, they put them all. Yeah.
But I could also totally see Cisco being like, if the three of them are there, that'll have a better impact of them working this out than if it's just O'Brien and Worf being diametrically opposed. Bashir's a little bit, he's more on O'Brien's side, but he's also gonna be a bit more of a mediator. That's
Right.
me just interpreting that while I was
Also
thinking that was
TV.
stream of consciousness.
Well, I think
Also TV.
what that speaks to is I often have to think about, like, what's the difference between good leadership and bad leadership, and what are like all the different ways that it expresses itself. And I've developed a thesis. I'm going to workshop it with you all here, and I think this is precisely where Sisko goes right almost all of the time, is that when you are in a position of power, so obviously in Star Trek we're talking about commanding officers of one kind or another, but in life we can be talking about like managing a team at work. I help coach my roller derby team. That's a position of leadership and authority. Some people will take those positions and use them to nurture people, and some people will take those positions to nurture power. And what you are seeing in almost all of Sisko's behavior, obviously he makes mistakes along the way because he's a human, well, kind of human, mostly human. He's also like a quarter god or half god. So we can talk about that separate panel. But it's an unselfish kind of love, right? It is a love with the other person's wants, needs, and perspective and well-being at the center of it. And even when it is someone like Jake, who is his kid, obviously he has more experience and age and wisdom and all of that sort of stuff. So he has to be kind of paternalistic, but it is never about like the way that I see a lot of parents interact with their kids is just about pumping themselves up and making themselves feel big and powerful, right? I'm in control.
Them at all.
Right. Right. And you can see it in the, it's just like, I'm the one in control. I'm the one in power. I call the shots, all of that sort of stuff. And you can hear it's really just about flexing the power that you have over someone else. Whereas good leadership, good parenting, et cetera, is about realizing that like I'm in a position where I have something to give. You recognize the pitfalls that come with that, and you actually have the other person's best interest at heart at all times, even if it ends up costing you something. And that's, I think, the test of a good leader, and one that Ben passes almost every time.
Yeah. Also, the on the opposite side, his foil being Gul Dukat, who definitely wants positions of leadership for power, and also like, yeah, he seems to love Zial, and he does nurture. Like, he's like, oh, she wants to be an artist, great, but also like he doesn't. There is an extension of ego. Like when she says that she got like accepted to some art school, he's like, "Why didn't you tell me you were applying? I know the guy who runs it. I could have gotten you in." And she's like, "But I wanted to get in on my own merit."
Yeah.
It's kind of like, and whereas Sisko would be like supportive of Jake like applying, but he wouldn't have, pulled that kind of nepotism. Dukat kind of has a he, in the way he loves Zial, there's ego, but there's also this element of like she's his daughter, so she should be able to excel, and anyone who disagrees, he's not gonna hear anything. Sisko is aware of Jake's faults, but he loves them. Like, even when he's talking to Rom about Nog and Jake fighting, he's like, Jake's going through this phase where he cannot clean up after himself to save his life. Like, and he admits it, like.
Yeah. And when he was like, even when he was, nose down in the writing and didn't want to go on the ship adventure or whatever, he's like, I thought you were going to leave it. And like, just lets him, he's like, all right, write the thing, do the thing, write the thing. But yeah, like, and like, I mean, you can't just let the kids do whatever the hell they want, right? Like he gives little gentle nudges, but then he just doesn't push after that. He's like, maybe you should think, okay, which I like, versus completely hands off or like you weigh in there, but just a little gentle, like, have you thought about? Okay, great, thank you, and then it plants the seed, and enough times out of the times it works.
Yeah. Or even like when Jake, when just young, and he's talking about like when we first meet Vedic Win. My child.
Space Karen.
And
Hate that
she
bitch.
interrupts a class session and is just like,
Just
have you
not.
considered teaching religion in your school? And and Keiko is trying to be very respectful. I'm like, well, that's your job, is to teach them religion, and I'll be teaching this other stuff. But like, yeah, that's
Right.
great. And but then also when they've like
Wait
pulled
till I
like all
end
of
the whole world in 20 years.
yeah, like, and then they like and then they like pull all the students from class, right? And then it's like almost just Jake and Nog by this point, and Keiko tells them about Galileo and how the church made him like apologize for teaching that the earth revolves around the sun, which I was like, interesting. Did you change your curriculum a little bit, Keiko? A little point to it. I mean, fair enough.
Good for her.
Right.
And
Karen, anytime you can.
Jake is like, this is so stupid. They're doing it again right now. And Sisko's like, well, their faith is what kept them together during 50 years of occupation. It's not stupid. And Jake's like, so you agree? And but which is a very kid logic of like there's one or the other. And Sisko, kind of says like, what I'm saying is it's important to recognize like the emotions involved. And so it's like he doesn't just say, well, that's what Jake thinks and I'm gonna just let him run wild. He does these little gentle corrections, which allows Jake, and because he is so good and kind and loving and caring, Jake respects him and listens to his corrections. He's not someone who's just saying, actually, you're wrong. He explains it in a way that Jake can come to his own conclusion. And it's great.
I'd be interested in bringing another Sisko parenting moment into the conversation, and it's one that I don't know that we have discussed before, and it is when Ben and Jake and Nog go on their planet cataloging mission to the Gamma Quadrant, where we first meet the Jem'Hadar. Because obviously the focus in that episode is on the Jem'Hadar and the Vorta that they meet and all of that sort of fun junk. But the inciting bit of that story is that Jake has a science report that he needs to do. Nog also has a science report to do, and Ben is thinking of this very much like this is going to be a father-son fun trip kind of thing happening, and then all of a sudden Nog is a part of it, and then all of a sudden Quark is a part of it, and
Rom was going to be a part of it. Did Rom come as well as Quark? No,
it was Quark and Rom, yeah.
It was Quark and Nog, not Rom.
Yeah, Quark and Nog, yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, getting thrown off. My
Funny
bad.
would have been if it was Quark and Rom and not Nog.
But I think about times in my childhood where I think kids are a lot more perceptive than most people want to give them credit for. And so parents will often try to do the right thing and like not put that baggage on their kids. But like kids just pick up on it in a way that like kids just pick up on that stuff sometimes. And I can remember a lot of times like that in my childhood, like experiences that were really valuable to me where I could tell my mom maybe had a different idea in her head of how she wanted a particular thing to play out, like a museum trip or a concert that she thought it would be fun for us to go to together. When I'd be like, oh, can, this friend of mine come? And you can tell she's like, God, I was really hoping it would just be me and you. But again,
It's
like
not going to be the same trip at all.
yeah. But again, like my mom recognized that those things were important to me and that like this is an evolution of a parent-kid relationship, right? It's not just you and your kid. At some point your kid becomes a person with their own relationships and their own agency and doing things, and that as a parent, a valuable thing that she can contribute is like supporting and encouraging that. And that's like one of the things that, when I look back on my childhood and I think about those sorts of fun things, I think about the times like I don't want to glorify self-sacrifice in the sense that like you're not allowed to be your own person once you have kids, but recognizing that like I have wants and needs. It's okay for me to have feelings, but the center of it has to be this little human that I'm trying to like raise up and put into the world. And if there's something that I appreciate about my own mom so much, it's that, like, you know, she's not perfect because no one ever was, but more often than not, like overwhelmingly more often than not, she fell very much on the right side of that. And that is a lot of what showed me how to like love and encourage and nurture other people. And it's a thing that I see in Ben as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and also like with that on top of it, it's like it makes sense that like Ben knows that there is not, that he can't just say no, like this chaperone can't come. But also Ben is aware he's not going to sacrifice his like honor as the commander of Deep Space Nine and just humor Quark's marketing pitch just to like make nice. And can, in some ways that's a valuable lesson for both Jake and Nog there to like witness like, hey, no, that's not happening. And this is not the appropriate environment to be bringing this up, you know, and in a very calm, although very frustrated manner. And it reminds me of, yeah, like my mom too. I mean, my mom genuinely likes getting into things that her kids are into in a really incredible way. Like the amount of like Smosh YouTube videos she's watched, because I was watching them. They're like old YouTube, and just like stuff like that. She's like, but like and she was talking to me today about how she was like, you know, I kind of like the Smosh Am I the Asshole reading videos. Those are kind of fun. I was like, wow, you're a good mom. But at the same time, you know, I find myself responding in kind in other ways. Like there was like a year or so ago, I just turned to my mom and I said, I want to get flowers. My mom's a huge gardener. I am not much of a gardener. And I just like, I want to go to like the nursery and pick up some flowers. It was not a time in the season where you could really get a lot of flowers. She was aware of it. It wasn't winter, but it was just like it wasn't quite spring yet. My mom though was so excited that I had suggested this that my mom was like, "Will you go like tomorrow?" And I was like, "Sure." And she's like, "But like we have to get there early because that's like what the good stuff is and like the fresh things." And
we gotta be at the nursery at rope drop, yo.
Seriously.
God, I love your mom so much.
So like I get up at like, we get up at like 7 a.m. to go to her favorite nursery that's in the area.
I mean,
there's like 3 other people. And she's like, all right, this is the good soil. And
like, that old lady out the way. I'm gonna get the soil.
She's like explaining everything to me. She's like, this area is where this would be. This, and then she was like, you could tell that she was almost a little worried that because there weren't a lot of flowers that I wasn't going to be as into it. And then she's just like, so like this month, this is when these. And I was like, no, like it was fun. I'm having a good time. We picked up like a bunch of petunias because those were the only things available at the time. And then like I did not plant a single one. We just grabbed a crap ton and because we were into them and there was like a sale, and then we were like petunias, and then we just are like putting them around the garden, and I was like, in the dirty part, that's on you, Mom. I'm gonna go take a nap now. But like it's one of those things of like, I think that's usually flipped of like the parent is like, all right, if this is what you want to do, I guess we'll do that. And okay, now it's time for me to take a nap. But I find like, because my mom has done so many of those things, I find myself excited to do those things for her. And then sometimes I'm like, all right, that was now you take it from here.
Right. And that has to be like, part of the whole thing with Ben and Jake too, right? Is that, like you said, like
he goes on a sun sail trip.
Right, yeah. But he's just like, hey, maybe, you know, like, oh, okay. And just lets him come to it on his own. And Jake does. He's like, okay, you know what, actually, I'm going to go on the big heavy boat that somehow, I can't remember the science behind why it.
Tetrions.
It was something about tetrons in it. But he literally said it's too heavy. And I'm like, too heavy? What does that mean? Anyway, sorry. I can't.
Yeah.
If anyone in the chat is listening, why did the ship go into warp by itself? Because it was too heavy.
I believe. Yeah, I don't remember the weight part, but it's the tachyons in I think in the Denorius belt like caught the sail, something along those lines.
And the same thing must have happened to the ancient Bajorans.
Exactly.
Yeah, right.
Also, if that ship was only big for one person, how many ships did they have?
Right.
Just saying.
Yeah. Yeah. This is like, I always, whenever somebody asks me to describe myself, if I'm meeting someone for the first time, there's a couple of different ways I can go about it, but I think one of the more salient ways I can describe myself is first do that. If you fail at that, then
fall down. Oh, ask the answer.
Yeah, I like to describe myself as like forever kind of an 8-year-old kid at show and tell, where I just like I have all of these things that I love. Right. For me, when I was that age, it was my action figures and my like vehicles for my action figures. But like, I just thought these were the coolest things in the world. And I just knew that if I did a good enough job telling everyone else about these things, that they would be as excited about them as I am. And so I would get very animated talking about my action figures and my toys and my vehicles and all that sort of stuff. And I think the adult version of that is somewhat played out in fandoms. And that is energy that I have taken into my life where like I know the way that I feel about Star Trek, the way that I feel about roller derby, the way that I feel about my girlfriend, my dog, all of these sorts of things. These things are so exciting to me. I want to share them with other people, and that helps other people get to know me. Mm-hmm. And so the flip side of that is how I get to connect with other people is I am legitimately that interested in their things.
Yeah.
And yeah, totally.
And that
I think people think I'm weird sometimes because like I'll do that and people think that I'm like making fun of them. And I'm like, no, I really want to know. Like, tell me.
Yeah.
You know, like
right, because I love seeing people get excited about stuff like that because that means that hits at something that's very real to who they are as people, and so like it helps me get to know you. Like even my girlfriend listens to a lot of music that is not necessarily my thing, but I like every time she's like, oh, I've got this playlist, like I'm gonna listen to that entire playlist because like that's gonna help me get at and understand her and know her better. And
you might find something new you like too. Like it's win-win, right? Like
and that's kind of, to bring it back to Star Trek, that the episode Explorers is kind of that, right? Jake is like, oh, okay, this thing is really important, and so I'm gonna indulge, even though it's I might not be the most excited about this particular thing, but I know it means a lot to my dad, and so I'm gonna go because that's gonna be a way that we connect. And of course, it ends up being this great thing. And I can think about, in fairness, I can think about times where I've made decisions like, yeah, let's just go do the thing, and it's gone wrong and not the best. But like on balance, I'm always gonna make that decision. To just like go do the thing, get the experience, get the knowledge, make that connection with somebody.
I almost went to like a hunters like game hunters seminar just because I knew someone I knew who was kind of curious.
There are limits. I'm not doing a murder for a good time. I'm sorry.
Listen, I'm telling you. No, but in the like, you can go in and then maybe it's not gonna. But you know what saved me? That place did not allow women.
Shocking.
Weird.
And so the predicted. So I was like, well, you can go to this if you want.
Gay people either.
Yeah, so this is a male friend, and he was like, well, that seems like a place that actually has a lot of red flags, so I don't think I want to go either. And I was like, great. See, and this is why I'm friends with you, even though you're
murdering
interested
wasn't
in
enough.
Well, no, it was just like
women.
Listen, when you live in a place with this much Lyme disease, you think to yourself, Bambi could die. Anyway, no, I'm kidding, guys. Randy's like, this is taking a turn.
I don't know what's happening.
But what it all comes back to is, I think like the messaging of like the parenting and being a good parent that we see Ben Sisko doing is also like how you be a good human being. It's love, respect, and genuine interest. You know, and
like, and I keep coming back to it, but like it's guidance with space,
Mhm.
right? You also just don't want to let
Mhm.
someone just run off and do whatever the hell, like it's not that.
Mhm.
Guidance with space, which is I think it's got to be tough. I mean, back to Callie's point, we are not parents, but it's got to be tough as a parent to walk that line, right? Of like guiding but not holding on too tight, and like how much is enough to say like maybe you should do that, because like kids are hormonal and weird. Like you say the one wrong thing, and so like walking that line of I should probably help a little bit right here, but maybe that not that much. Like that's got to be a balancing act.
Yeah,
Well,
that's another thing. Jake is a supremely awesome kid. He
that's fair.
That
Uh,
is,
we
yeah, that's
never
true.
if all
we
kids
never
were him, I
see
wouldn't hate him
like,
so much.
oh, if all kids were like Jake, like, oh my god. um
It's that meme of the like
um
flying cars.
but
How
I
the
will
world
say,
would be if all
yeah,
kids,
I do
all
love.
kids were Jake's.
I will say though, he's not overly perfect in a way like that's annoying. He's
Right?
very well
No, he's
written.
just a great
But
kid.
we never see like angsty Jake who yells at his dad saying, "I hate you." Like, even though, like, because teens will say like hate and not even realize how hurtful that can be to a parent. I've said it and I
Yeah.
really regret it. I'm like, imagine like, you've loved this kid their whole life and then they look at you and you're like, I freaking hate you. And it's like,
Mhm.
I don't want to see that happening to instead of Jake saying that to Ben. But also, like, he maybe to a certain extent because his mother died, he knows he would never say that. But I don't know.
This is a great
Yeah,
thought.
I
And
love
I
this.
think this makes sense. Thank you.
You're a parent until your kid strikes out on their own, and then you're their friend until they
Until
want
they need a
you to
parent.
be their parent. Yeah,
Yeah.
Yes, yes, yes.
yeah.
All right.
That resonates with
Yeah.
me a little bit, but I think, I mean, and I even live like halfway across the country from my mom now, which I know, like, I'm fortunate that my mom is still around. I know a lot of people aren't that fortunate. But there's definitely still like big mom energy in all of our interactions, even as
Mm.
I turned 40 this year. And it's but I mean, I do get it because it's definitely a thing that I enjoy about having a close relationship with my mom in adulthood is that we are we're more friends than we used to be, and we can just enjoy
Hmm.
each other's company without like the bigness of the parent-child relationship, and we're
Right,
just like
right, right.
hanging out on the back porch smelling grill as it's going, like just being people connecting with each other. And obviously you can't do that necessarily when you're 5,
Right.
unless you're like equally into Bluey as your kid, which is totally reasonable thing, to be clear.
Or you have a terribly inappropriate relationship. Not in a bad way, but the bad way, but the bad way. Anyway, that was our talk. We want to let you guys go a few minutes early so you can jump to the next thing
Yeah.
and enjoy their content as well. But thank you so much for showing up. I was
Mhm.
seeing comments go by, but just because of the weird time difference, we kept talking. So I saw you guys. So thanks for that. Come find us all the places at Lambda Quadrant, and also make sure to support VTC and Seventh. Those kids were amazing, and they always tolerate our craziness. So
You cut out at the end, Randy. You cut out at the end.
oh, it was in a different language, so it's fine.
He was speaking Klingon for all of those who are not
Yes, yes,
who are
yes,
not
yes,
Klingon
yes, yes.
speakers. It's
But thank
important.
you. We love you. Go to the next thing. Find us all the places. We'll see you guys at SCLV hopefully, and have a bad night.
Wow. Wow.
Bye.